So thanks to everybody for coming out. This is an opportunity that we try to take advantage of quarterly, where we have a different topic to help people think about some of the issues going on in the community. Where are there opportunities maybe for you to get more involved in a particular issue that may be of interest to you. So tonight we are talking about fatherhood, how we can come alongside fathers to support fathers in the community. And so tonight we have a great panel. I'm going to get out of the way and let you guys say that.
Wow, that was a very quick intro. Wow. Okay. Cool. Hi, everyone. Can I get a raise a hand if you're here? Raise your hand if you're here. Here. The Draga Chocolate. It's good to see some friends in the crowd. People I have been around, and people that I've been blessed to just be associated with out there, and some new friends and faces. My name is Darren Ho. And I'm a proud member of the Citizens Heaven community. I don't go to every single event out there like all of you. We kind of have to pick and choose given the work that is been laid upon us. But when it comes to this topic of being a man, being a husband, being a father of 3 lovely children, 12, 10, and 14, I have to come because that organization of which God has given me, the organization of the family, is the most important organization that I will be entrusted to. I also happen to be an entrepreneur. I own a company that I founded 8 years ago called The Restored Leader. We are a professional coaching firm. We coach founders, executives, as well as first-time leaders. We help them become more authentic, confident, and joyful. We measure only authenticity, which is harmony with belief. Confidence, which is the tension between ambition and humility. And joy, posture you can take in any circumstance. We measure those outputs. And as such, we also then help businesses that these leaders run. And most importantly, we help them with their family. We have this a service called the Restored Family. And we offer that here through actually our C7 community. We've had 2 runs, 9 guys each session. You go about 4 weeks. I think we're starting another one on the people. So join us if you haven't, and you think maybe that might be a good opportunity. Look for that announcement. Lori will send something out and be there as well. So I'm here today really as a facilitator for this discussion on some of my favorite topics with men that some I know and some I've just gotten to know. And so this is, again, a privilege to be able to serve in such a way today. And what I'd like to do is actually ask each of these men to introduce themselves. Just, of course, your name, a little bit about how you describe yourself, and maybe even so, what's your favorite part about being you? Now, this is really important, okay? Because I think we need to just realize we need to own a little bit about why we've been called up here, okay? So I think it's okay for you to just say, hey, this is what I like about being me right now. I mentioned I have 3 children. They go to the international school here in Indianapolis. I've been married next month 18 years to Stephanie, who actually missionary dated me and converted me. And I do need to shout out to Matt Hoyer here from Mission. Matt and his small group community in 2007 welcomed this single guy who wanted to know everything I could about what it's like to be a God-fearing man marrying a woman, had just converted into the faith. And Mac here, Kristen, very special people that I haven't seen since 2009. So, wow. So, shout out to men and fathers and husbands. Yeah? All right.
Great introduction. Good evening, Larry Smith with Fathers and Families Center. Father of 3, divorced, father of 3. That's the, well, in addition to being a dad, love of learning. I like that. Lifelong learning, exceedingly important to me.
I believe that. I believe that.
So Mitch Davis, thanks Darren, appreciate it. I am a father of 3 as well. My wife Julie, we've been married 30 years as of October, but our kids are 26 and 24 and 21, so a little bit older. Love that. My favorite thing right now is actually about this season of life that I get to be a part of, really with my family becoming, having their own lives. I'm really leaning into that and loving that and it being a part of it. I was talking to my daughter today and it really excited me. So
That's a great answer. Thank you.
Not to be confused with Mitch Davis. I'm Micah Davis. And it's not Dave's. I gave away a hard time. She put in Dave's all for a month in preparations. Davis. I'm actually pretty new to Citizen 7. I met Greg maybe about a year ago or so. And I've attended a couple of the meet and greets, but got to know John C. very well through the book clubs that happened this past summer. And he sent me an email a couple months ago and asked me to participate. When I saw these guys' resumes, I'm like, I don't know if I'm qualified and you're one of the best dads I've talked to. You talk about your boys all the time, and I have 3 kids as well. That was a qualification to grown. Yeah, it is. Mine are 16, 13, and 11. So I'm in the throes of it, like Larry, and special time of life. Yeah, we've gotten them past the scary little kid years, and now we're on to the scary teenage years. So yeah,
So, nice to meet you too. Nice to meet you. We're going to be talking through 4 particular topics today, what we call the 4 Ps. The first P we're going to talk about today and have panelists really explore is what it's like to be you, this person, which is why I asked, what is your favorite thing about being you right now? And I think it's important to own that. And if you don't think about what's it like to be you in this season, this is a great opportunity for you to think about that as well. We're going to talk about then being a provider. What does that mean? Boy, what does that mean? And let's unpack that. We're going to talk about then being, the spouse. Okay, you have a spouse piece of things. I don't know what P that is, but okay, some partner there is. And then the parent, and with the parent. So the first 2 really are actually about self and how we see ourselves before relationship goes into the spouse and then relationship into the parent. And I think an important note here, folks, is that, listen, you cannot have a role unless you have a relationship. So I think that's really, really important because a relationship means there's a role on one end and a role on another. And I think there's a lot of storylines here that we're going to be talking about how maybe our relationships might be challenged. Maybe because we're not playing the right role, or we don't have another person playing that other role in a relationship. But as men, as persons, let's start there. The role of you being you. So the question here that I'd love to ask you guys to popcorn on, and anyone can answer here, is this first one. Being a parent is just one of those 4 Ps we talked about. But how do the other roles impact your ability to parent? Whether it's spouse, provider, how do you think those things influence the way you parent?
I'll start on that. So I think the person piece of it, I think, was one that I was focused on a little bit with this question because if we're not individually, right with our own spiritual walk, with our own relationship with Jesus, I think it's really hard to then model that and parent that. And so as my kids are getting older and are more observant of everything I do, I know they always are. They always see us, right? They always see what we're doing. That's become more and more something that I'm self-aware of. I want my boys to wake up and see me at the couch in the living room, like reading the Word, right? Or, spending time, in prayer. And so I can model that. But again, I can't do that authentically unless it's actually something that you're doing personally. So that part of my person, right now in this time of Lent, that's something I've been doing. That's just something that God's been putting on my heart is, how am I working to grow closer to Him, being a good example for my kids.
Well, good, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, similarly, being the role model for your kids, I think is crucially important. Being aware that they're always looking at your kids. So my oldest is, so I was a dad at 16, so my oldest is 38. I have a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old, just became an empty nester, set my last one off the collar. But especially, and so the youngest one is his son, so 2 daughters with his son. I know that even though he wouldn't admit it, he looks at me, what I do, He's very, very aware of my life and what goes on, and so a great deal of pressure, right? Not wanting to make, on the one hand, not wanting to make mistakes, but then understanding that he also needs to see mistakes so he can know what you reward, right? So.
Yeah, there's something about this allowing mistakes.
I think that leads into vulnerability. One of the things my kids have said to me that they appreciated, and I wasn't always this way. I always thought I have to show up like I'm making it happen, right? Yeah, I think when I get to the point where I was willing to be vulnerable and share where I was struggling, the things I was working on personally, it offered them the opportunity to share where they were at. So that's been one of the biggest things and the most important things that's happened is one, vulnerability, and two, that I'm actually doing something about it. I'm working on those things, and they're seeing the fruit, they're seeing the progress in that, and also they're making mistakes and messing up along the way and willing to
Share that and be open about it.
It's beautiful. I want to just make sure everybody in the audience just knows for a question and answer later on. We've got empty nester. I'm right here with Larry. Okay, Mitch, you're fully empty nested as well.
I have one still at home because he's in school.
Okay, one still at school. And Micah, for you, just give us a perspective of your age of your kids.
High school, middle school, and 6th grade.
Awesome. Just so you guys know, and I am right at middle school. We've got 3 basically middle school, 1 going into high school. I'd love to just tackle one personal thing before we move on to provider, actually. This last thing about personal. And it has to do with something, Mitch, you mentioned about vulnerability. And Micah mentioned something about lending. And maybe it's a great opportunity for us to do a little bit of confession about what we're working on right now. So, and I'm just going to ask you guys to be real particular if you can. And I'll go first. I'll model it, yeah, so that we're all clear of the fact that we are trying to be serious about who we are, who we're becoming, okay? And we are constantly dealing with our demons, the ones that have been with us for a while, or the ones that I'm just trying to shed, or new ones. And for me, it's been very, very clear to me the Lord has been showing me how to, but I have been fairly disobedient to, really rid myself of triggering anger. And those of you who know me, okay, and I think you know me well, you may think that's impossible, Darren, for you to have triggering anger. But boy, do I have it. And the triggering anger, I've learned in this season, happens when my wife is on business. Look, there could be a whole bunch of things that could happen when my wife's on business. But the one thing that the entity is doing to really get me to create a narrative of control is to be a single parent at home for a lengthy period of time and allow myself to be righteously triggered and angry. That's something I'm really, really been struggling through and working on, but it's been real present in me through this season of Lent and fasting. It's not I'm going to get rid of it. It's really, how am I repentant and preparing to repent and turn away from that and require me to ask others to help me in that. And that's actually including my children. And that's what I've learned here in the past. So being vulnerable for you guys, each of you, what are you working on right now in this whole being the personal? You know, we rehearsed this already.
Oh, yeah.
Hours of practice.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'll go, and I'm not trying to just say it because you did, but I wrote this down. I said working on my patience because I'm sometimes quick to anger. And again, I'm a pretty joyful guy. I'm a happy guy. So again, people that know me wouldn't suspect that. But my kids joke, I'll share personal. I started taking testosterone about 2 years ago. I don't know if anybody else takes it, but it's awesome. But I don't know, like my boys are like, Cat, like, are you going to it right now? Yeah. I'm like, I don't think so, but I'm like, maybe, who knows? Maybe I should dial it back a little bit. But yeah, no, I mean that's something, Darren, that I'm dealing with too. Is my patience. Again, maybe it's the teenagers or the kids just start to push buttons in a different way. But it bothers me because I can tell that I have a pretty quick trigger now that didn't used to be that way. And there's maybe sometimes good righteous anger as a parent, but I mean, this is more of like me just losing my temper and being short in my speech with them or raising my voice to a level, then like I'll sometimes be aware of it, like right after I did it, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but you know that you know I feel guilty right away for how I acted, you know.
It's really good. Thanks for making me not feel so. Appreciate that.
You know, for me, vulnerability is important. So, you know, my parents were divorced when I was 4 or 5. My father was not involved in my life, and so here I am at 16 trying to figure out how to be a dad. And so for me, that was, well, you know, I'm the one in charge. You know, I have to assert myself. And you know, I've been in my role at Fatherhood Families now for about 3.5 years, and what we teach is very different from what I observed and learned growing up, not having my father in the home. And so I'll never forget, so my son, 18 now, about 10 years ago, we were having a discussion about something. I don't even remember what it was, but he was opening up to me, and which at the time, not today, but at the time made me feel very uncomfortable. And so my response to him was, you know, I'm your father. If you need emotional support, you go, that's what mom is for, right? You talk about things that you wish you could take back. And so last year he had a challenge. One of his friends was going through something, you know, pretty serious, dealing with things at school and so on. And my son was really with him, you know, throughout this period, was really, really a good friend to him. I didn't know anything about it. His mom actually ended up telling me. And so I called him up. He's in college out in New York. And so I said, well, son, how come you didn't tell me about this? And he reminded me what I said, you know, 10 years ago. And so, you know, he never forgot it. Never, and understandably so. And so over the years, you know, trying not to be just, you know, the tough dad, the one who is, you know, sort of invulnerable in my mind, or at least I didn't want to show it any weakness to them. Overcoming that has been a challenge.
Anybody want to feel that one? Vulnerability?
Mine is control. You know, I think I'm a strategist by nature, but I grew up in a family where my dad was the fire chief in our town. He was the, you know, bomb squad, instructor, the guy who kind of showed up on the front page of the paper a lot, right? But it was because he had this mantra, lead or follow or get out of the way. And so I learned a lot of that, and that it was ingrained in me. Even though I was a peaceful guy, that control, I would have told you, I don't have the control issue. For sure, control is not my problem, but that as soon as I feel like God has given me an answer on how to move forward, Matt's not because he knows me, then I pick up the law. And I get my control room and try to orchestrate the strategy, whether it's with my family, my kids, or whatever it is that I happen to be doing. And so learning that. Right now, I'm struggling with that. I was talking to my daughter last night, and she was sharing some thoughts about what's going on in their lives. And I'm hear her say something, and I count 1, 2, but don't say anything. Don't put the thoughts out there. You know, step back and listen and absorb. And you know, so that's been a big part of it. In fact, today I asked my kids, I'll for 1 now and 2 later, but 2 of them, I said, what's the one thing you would share with dads if you were in front of a group of dads today? And my daughter, the first one, said, ask questions and be really willing to hear the answers. And I think there were a lot of times in my life where I was asked a lot of questions, but I was already formulating what I wanted the answers to be ahead of time.
There's a lot of shifts here in what you're saying. You're seeing yourself as, yeah, and there's a lot of maturing. And I think like this is when we're talking about where we're most vulnerable or where we first work. That's just a sign of maturity, and it's really, really important to start there. That we are aware, and we know what we need to tackle. Now, doing that, that's the challenge of life. Is actually doing the work. And we need one another, and we need feedback, and we need those who we have offended to actually give us feedback. It's interesting. We just need to be ready for it too. I'd love to transition us to the provider section, because provider can be depending on how you go up. It's a different definition. And I want each of you to perhaps maybe share a take on what it means to be a provider. And I'll just quickly share that as one came to the faith just 20 years ago, I had no idea, other than one way, what a provider was as a man, and I had totally evolved it as a practicing Christian about what a provider means. It's far more multifaceted. So, how about for you guys? What is the definition of provider that you're going to speak to today?
Well, I so God willing, I'll be 56 next month. So, even though my father wasn't there, I was socialized, to believe, to understand that men provided material, right? So you get a job, you take it. So fortunately, I've not had the challenges with that. But at the end of the day, I always talk about presence, right? There's the PRESENTS presence. Those are your gifts are important, but the other presence, PRESENC, being there, right? That is what they really, really need, right? The provision of time. And so I always, my kids were very active in school, so no matter what I had going on, I always tried to make sure that I was there for, recitals and plays and all that stuff. And so the material thing is typically been relatively easy. It's the provision of time and understanding that how incredibly important that is.
I love how you elevated that. So if being providers provide one of the things that we're given, time, our talent, the stuff that you could not have actually designed in us, and our treasury. And you're saying with elevate presence, it's your time and your talent, that's powerful. I want to hold that into the conversation moving forward, as I think we could talk about strategies of which we could become more present.
I think when I was young in being a dad at 30, I thought being a provider was about financial security, a house that they didn't worry for anything, right? And really struggling to make sure that's exactly what I was providing. And then over time, I wrote down today, Dallas Willard's quote on blessing, projecting good into the light of another. And that blessing for my kids, the good that I could offer them is a big thing for me to provide because, so many kids aren't fathered well. So many sons are never fathered and they don't have that. That good that I can project, I can offer to my kids is a big part of provider. And then I'll go back to time that you talked about. My youngest son, I asked him that same question. He said, Dad, that 80% of the time you have with your kids is before they're 18. And he said, 85% of it's by the time they're 30. And he said, you spent time with me and invested in me when we were kids. So it's like, okay, so it's time and it's blessing. And it is the financial provision and the security. But that's by far not as big of a thing. I agree with you up to what you're saying. As I made it when I was a young dad.
Yeah, some shifts there, now transformed, yeah.
For sure, yeah. I've been blessed to be married to my wife. It'll be 20 years this year. She actually stopped working when we had our first son. He's 17 years ago, and so since then I've been a single providing income, and so there's a lot of pressure that comes to that, right? And but I remind myself, similar to what you guys mentioned, that is not my sole job or my sole identity is being the worker, right? I mean. Ultimately, I remind myself that God's the ultimate provider and he gives us the gifts and we're stewards, whether that's our money, our time, our kids, right? Those are all things that he provides for us and that we have to, properly steward those things. So that's a refreshing reminder that's not all on me to figure that stuff out, that he's been faithful and will continue to be so. But I think the balance of it, maybe it is something that happened with maturity, but I think my wife would say I definitely spent too much time away when our kids were younger. I traveled a lot for work, right? Trying to climb the corporate ladder. So that's something that in the last, 5-7 years, I've been much more intentional about setting healthy boundaries with work. And I just took on a national sales position a year ago. And I told the owners of the company early on, I said, listen, my boys and my wife, and they're the most important thing to me. And so if this role, I know it's going to involve travel, which it does. I travel the country all the time. But Mike, if it starts to become too much, if they say, hey, Dad, we're missing you, like, we're going to have a conversation. This is going to change. So, and they respected that and they were cool with that. So Hasn't happened yet. I haven't thrown up the white flag and had to change, but that was a negotiation that we had early on, that happy to do this job as long as it doesn't, infringe upon what's, the number one priority.
Amen. Being a provider, just the essence of the word, you think about it, you're providing something or you're offering something, you're giving something, call it time, talent, or treasure. You cannot give what you don't have. So a lot of times what I tend to see is justification of marginalizing what I think is righteously good to say. I would give more time to my X, Y, and Z because they're poor. But you're pulling from a bag of empty. And I think that it's really, really important. Remember, we cannot provide a single thing if we don't have it to provide. And yet if God is, in fact, the ultimate provider, then boy, is there a communication point there for what we are needing more of, so that we can provide by his provision. We got two more categories here, and I'm really gonna move into the spouse type, because this is really, really important. It's also complicated. The relationships you have with your spouse. And so I'd love to ask like two parts to this question. The first one is this: you can talk a bit about your relationship with your spouse, and co-parenting spouse, in Larry this case. Because of the second question, how would you describe the unification towards raising children? I'm gonna start with Larry. We have your chance to catch up here, and we talked about the 90%, which I just want us to be is awesome at running 90% co-parenting. But maybe just talk about that relationship with your ex-wife there and before.
Yeah, so we were married for 10 years. We met in grad school. Brilliant woman. So married 10 and now divorced to be 13 this year. But 90% of the time we agree, fortunately, right? So we don't, hang out, go to dinner and all that stuff, but we co-parent very, very effectively. And really the foundation, one, we're both, believers, and reasonable people. We, once we knew we were getting divorced, we both decided, thank God, that the kids were about to be first, right? That no matter what was going on between us, we were going to place the children first. And so that, that's absolutely crucial, which was to say, during our marriage, sometimes easier said than done. You have to swallow ego sometimes and go, okay, even if we have shades of disagreement, what is going to be ultimately best for the kids? And so it's generally worked out very well.
And how would you, just as a follow-up, how would you say your kids, they're not yours, speak for themselves.
Yeah.
If you look back and the experience you've had, how would you say they've responded to the co-parenting?
So they were my younger two were very young when we got divorced, and they understood very early on that they could not place against each other. Right. So two different households, but they knew if they asked me something and I said no, they couldn't go to mom, and she was going to say yes.
Yeah.
Right. So that was absolutely crucial. And so once that sunk in, that was very, very helpful.
Very good. Thank you. Down the line, Dax?
Yeah. I think when we first had kids, I sort of subjugated everything to my wife in terms of how I raised them, and I was the tactician, right? I came in to fix stuff and set things up and build. I feel like I'm really doing my job if I put all the things together correctly and fix what needs to be fixed in the house. And I've seen over time. We got out of order for a while there, where I was present but unaccounted for. I did the work, but I wasn't engaged deeply in the kids and what their needs were emotionally. And honestly, just because I had to look back at my past, I couldn't get what I didn't have. And my family was that way as well.
Yeah.
And as our kids got a little bit older and they started coming to me with things that maybe my wife was maybe pushing them to come to me with, I started to realize how important that part of it was, and I started to make a shift. And that helped her immensely, that she wasn't the emotional support 100%, Today, I think it's an equal thing. So as we, and I wish those things I've learned them much earlier. But, when my kids got a little bit older in their teenage years, I was deeply involved in, when a big decision was made, they spent a lot of time talking to me as well. And today, my daughter might come to me first. And I think what happens with that is it relieves the pressure off of my wife. I feel like she is the person responsible for it. And also that I think our kids see us as a team, and that we're together first. We look at ourselves and what we have to offer, and then out of that, we're offering something to them. But that's a constant struggle, right?
Yeah.
When we're busy or we have a lot to do. I mean, it's so easy for me to go back into do mode and fix mode and get lost in that, because that's like, I know how to do that. I don't have to stretch in that place.
Yeah. Awesome.
So earlier, I think I said, the number one most important relationship is the one that we have with God, the Lord. I think number two is the relationship we have with our spouses.
Yeah.
And I think that for me to show that to my kids is the best thing I can do for them, and to know that, she is the one that God put in my life to be my helper and my partner, and the way I can show her affection and love her and honor her in the way that we're supposed to as husbands is a great thing for me to model to the boys. I mean, aside from the boys coming to know the Lord, I want them to be good men and good husbands. And so if I can, again, honor my wife and love her, then that's me helping to train them how to do that someday. So again, that's easier said than done, but those are things that I try to think about. We have, I talked about, the temper earlier, but that's probably the quickest way for me to have, I think maybe a righteous anger is when they disrespect or do something that is hurtful to their mom. That's the one thing that they know will send me, kind of through the roof, because she does so much for them and sacrifices for them that when they treat her in a way that's not as they should, it's hard for me to not get mad about that.
Yeah, you haul it out. You're going to be called out.
Yeah, so good.
There's a lot more here around spouses, but I think, and not having spouse. So one of the things I want to get into next is actually a bit more around some of the broken families, missing fathers and children, because there is far more of that I've experienced in our community, where in all our children all have 50% of their classes have broken marriages, but a lot of these children are single children, and a lot of them raised by moms. There may be one raised by a dad, but that guy doesn't drug you much. So, but it's hard. I want to transition the panel to kind of talk a little bit more about this idea about children and fatherhood and absent fatherhoods, and whatever the reason why they are in that place. Maybe speak a bit about it. I know Larry and Mitch, you guys are far more experienced in this type of space, what we do. And Mike, I don't know as much you on this, but I'd love to talk a little bit more about the absent father and how that affects the parent. Let's go there first. We'll talk about other parenting things as well.
Yeah, so for those who are not familiar with Fathers and Family Center, we've been around for 33 years. We've served about 26,000 dads in that period. The vast majority of whom are either divorced or were never married to their children's mother or mothers. Although we've always been open to all dads, we've primarily served African American men. That's who come to us primarily. There's one thing I want to say by way of preface, though. I want to make a clear distinction between out of wedlock and not present, right? So everyone knows 75% of African American children are born out of wedlock. However, according to the CDC and other studies, African American fathers are actually the most involved in their children's lives. So that's an incredibly important distinction to make. Secondly, being present in the home, present but not engaged, right? As I have a lot of friends who grew up in a two-parent home whose dads were there, but were not engaged at all, right? And so with those two caveats, at the end of the day, we know everything that we do at the center is empirically based. So we know that when a father's involved, irrespective of whether he's physically in the home, Kids have higher self-esteem. They was less likely to do drugs, less likely to drop out. They will earn more money, on and on and on. There are all these benefits to when a father is actively involved in the life of your children. I tease my kids, and I always say, when they write their memoirs about how bad a dad I was, they will not be able to say that he wasn't there. Yeah, right. He was. They will say, in fact, I wish he would not be. Because he can just go away. But yeah, so just always there, and so my oldest is, like I said, 38. She'll celebrate 12 years of marriage this year. 5-year-old son, 4-year-old daughter, almost 6 and 5. And she, comes to me, right, even though she's grown and all that, to ask me about how would you handle this situation and all that, and then just kind of the stress of being a wife, a mom, and working adult, and all that, because she understood that I was always there for her. And so even though she's an adult, that part of the relationship was never separate, right? So she knows that she can always come to Dad. My middle one, we've grown much closer. Teenage years were incredibly, incredibly difficult. She's very strong-willed, super smart and all that. But once she goes away to college, now, all of a sudden, I'm not the dumbest person and not the meanest person. She knows anywhere she calls me about Bible study questions and all that. My son is the difficult one now. He's 18, so naturally he knows everything there is to know. And so that is, but over time, that I'm sure that'll change as well. But my point is, the fact that I was always there for them has forged that relationship.
It's great. Great distinctions there, and I'm glad you mentioned the distinction of engagement. I was going to parlay that into how we're going to land a plane tonight too. So yeah, that's good.
The thing that, as I think about, I agree 100% with what you're talking about. The thing that we encounter the most with dads are dads who didn't have a dad who was present, and now they're trying to father with no roadmap, right? They want to be a good dad. Their desire is to be a good father. It was not modeled for them because we're not fathered well typically in the United States or anywhere around the world. I mean, every place we work, a lot of times what you have is the dads show up for the child to be born and then they're gone. And now that child is left to learn how to operate, but how to live, but never learns how to father. And I think the biggest challenge that I see with that lack of fathering, one, it's secure attachment, which makes you feel confident to be able to offer that to your kids, but then not learning what to do and having no roadmap. And when we encounter a dad who didn't have that roadmap, he's not gone, but he's really, everybody's looking a little bit at, John Tyson talks about the 5 different kinds of father. He talks about the irresponsible or the ignorant. The irresponsible is the guy that's there and gone, completely out of their life. The ignorant doesn't know how to be a good dad, right? And so, and then that leaves that kid always wanting, mom's there, mom's taking care of him, but they don't know how to be a father. They don't know how to interact and react with men. And they maybe, and most likely, don't have a relationship with their Heavenly Father, with a group of people around them to, like a tribe. We don't in our society today have a community of believers or other people who were fathered well to influence and integrate that child into, how to father well, how to be a boy, how to graduate into manhood, what that journey looks like. So many of those things are missing. It's like a car with no wheels and no gasoline.
Yes.
With the father completely absent. But even if he's a divorced parent, the dad's engaged, there's a guy there, desiring deeply to father. So that it's difficult. But man, when they're missing or they're like the irresponsible person, that's a big miss. But then the ignorance when they were never taught how to father and they come in with no skills, and the kid's like, I'm just going to mom. Or what I'm going to do is move on to school, a coach, a teacher, Google, an algorithm, or YouTube, or a bunch of people who are fathered while other kids, right?
Really good. The distinction I want to pull out here is this roadmap. And I think ultimately there's something coming out of this today which is practically what is your roadmap, and how do you grab one? Because the fact is there's plenty out there, and at the same time they're all probably trying to model and miming what the word actually tells us. But do we know the genesis of what is true about the role of father? And a lot was messed up because of just the relationship he had with our fathers. Oh, gosh. So there's a lot here to unpack about the roadmap going forward, and then the engagement part. So we've got engagement, we've got roadmap, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to add, I don't have necessarily the vocational kind of answer here, but practically, for myself, I've just tried to get involved in my immediate community, right? Whether that's in my neighborhood of 45 homes, and get to know the kids that are there. I mean, kids that my kids are friends with. You know, we're hanging around the bonfire in the summertime, or I coach baseball and basketball in Noblesville. So getting to know all the kids in the team. I have no idea what all their family situations are like, but again, I'm sure that there's broken homes or absent, fathers there. So if I as a coach could be, again, similarly a good role model for those kids for a few months out of the year, and maybe love on them, show Christ to them, whatever that might look like, that intentionality, again, I'm sure that the Lord will use that in a good way. Personally, I don't have girls, but I had a brother-in-law pass away 3 years ago in a tragic snowmobile accident. He has two daughters, so I was, immediately given the opportunity to step into their lives, of no longer having their physical father. And, they lived in Minnesota. One of them goes to IU now, but that's been a real challenge to how to do that well, right? I mean, I can't replace their dad. They don't have their father anymore, but I can be, a male influence. I can be, the guy they look to for some of those hard questions. Some of them with orders, rules. I'm like, whoa, okay, this is new. I had no experience with this, but I think that's a tragic situation, but it's one that I think just looking for those opportunities, whether in our immediate family with nephews and nieces that may not have the best example, or kids in our community, just being aware of when that may come about, where God may present that. I say stepping in.
There's that third part, community. My parents always would never take credit for any success or failure, any success of their children. I've been one of two. They always would say it took a village. They grew up in a village in Southeast Asia. Literally, whoever needed to go to college, the villagers would come together and give everyone money. That was the first bank. And you'd hope, as you're the youngest of that villager, that they had enough money to send you to go to school. And it didn't happen for a long while. But this is the thing. It's the idea of being intentionally engaged, okay? And Micah, we talked about having a roadmap. You can't, if you're ignorant and you are, then you can choose to get a little bit of help. It might take a community to do that. It might take someone in Micah's situation, and I'm so glad to hear about this because I struggle personally with spiritually fathering other kids. I just generally don't like other kids. I say that to be very honest. It's hard for me to like the kids. I don't serve in youth ministry. My children and my wife love it. I'd rather pray for dogs. Okay, don't judge me, guys. But the fact is that we need Micah out there to spiritually father our children. So I'm inspired because just from a roadmap standpoint of view, my only son, turning 13 this coming year, and I follow Tyson's kind of roadmap, John Tyson's book called Intentional Fatherhood, and just the idea of preparing a trunk for him at 18 and preparing the next 5 years. Who do I want to be spiritually speaking in on the village mentality, being intentional? See, these are simple roadmap plays that work also for our daughters that way. The same boat works for our daughters.
Wes, one other thing I want to add to what your question was. I remember being a coach baseball at another coach, and that other coach could say things I could not say on my kids, and they still wanted to listen to him. And I remember sitting back while he was talking to them when 10 minutes before I was saying the exact same thing, and they're just wandering about. And he said they're locked eyes. And did you hear what he just says? At least my son says. I'm like, I did. He's such a great guy. Yeah.
But that is a beautiful thing to have that community of like-minded people, but they can speak that truth.
Yeah, I wonder if real providers of our nuclear families, truly provide opportunities for others to help parent our children. And because we cannot do it alone. And if we think we can, we probably will be in this room. We will be in this room. So, Mr. Palmer.
What do you do when trying, let's say it's great if you ever have a boss that you can say, hey, here are the boundaries, but a lot of times that doesn't necessarily work, right? I mean, I may do a job at Lillian, running my own business that, I had to put in the hour. I am the provider, and there's no other option. Or you are a parent, you are given it everything you got, and they're in puberty or they're height.
In other words, it's like, hey, you know what? I am failing. I used to,
Swimmingly failure.
now what you do, as a father, like, on achievement ran or doing it, you know what? I'm not giving myself figure great.
Yeah, my thoughts to that.
How do you deal with that? But this is not exactly answering that question. I'm tying in it a little bit to what Darren was talking about. I'm just using my oldest son, who's a sophomore at Heritage, and we're getting Young Life started there as a I say, oh, why do you get a Christian ministry at a Christian high school? And ultimately, part of my answer to that is that kind of this exact topic is there's a lot of kids there that again maybe come from Christian homes or their parents are Christians, and we don't know where the kids are in their life. And I'll use my own son. There's a lot of things that he, again, maybe has heard me say, but is going to listen to a student from Butler who's a volunteer. He might relate to that 21-year-old in a way that he feels more comfortable talking about something or sharing something that he doesn't want to share with me. So I think being aware of where those things are. Maybe it's youth group, maybe it's Young Life, maybe it's a teacher or coach. But I think knowing that you can't do it alone, I guess, is part of that answer. Is that I'm gonna fail for sure, right? Again, it goes back to also the partner piece. I'm glad I have my wife to be there when I fail daily. So it's not only on us, but just finding those other people to come alongside him.
Yeah, it seems to me, I remember being in that phase of life with my kids and feeling like I could not get a second. But when I did get it, I had to be super intentional. I had to really know, okay, I've got a little bit of time. I'm going to load my son up in the truck. We're going to go to Purdue and go to a basketball game. Or we're going to go, get ice cream. We're going to do this thing where we have very FaceTime, just my oldest son and I, because the others were really little. And I knew I just had a tiny window of time and I could try to maximize that time. And it was progress, not perfection. It was just little bits over a long period of time instead of these big chunks of time where I could just come home every night and be fully invested. No, I was on my phone every night. It was very difficult to find that time, but take that extra little half hour of time to go work on a project in the garage to say, hey, you want to come with me to change the tire on, the car. It's like, well, that doesn't seem like a thing you invite your little kid into, but they get to be with you. And if I go back to what Nick was talking about, 80% of the presence, the time to spend together is before we're 18. It didn't matter if it was changing a tire on a car or, sometimes something fun, but sometimes it was just, hey, let's get underneath this sink. Let me show you how plumbing works. And they enjoyed that. They loved that time. Good.
For me, the older that I've gotten, I've understood more and more the importance of asking my kids for grace. I failed here. I failed there. Will you forgive me? Right. And so again, that trying to be vulnerable, it's tough. I grew up in a tough neighborhood and all that. They're vulnerable was weakness, right? You didn't want to be weak at all, and so. But the older that I've gotten, the more I've understood the importance of asking them for grace and for faith.
I just want to mention to everyone, this is a great time to, Don, let us into about 10 more minutes. It's just open Q&A. I'd love to just keep on having you guys blitz questions to everyone up here. And while they're doing, of course, what we'll do to land plane is I'm going to have each of the guys just share a blessing that they wish they perhaps might have you might have the opportunity to share with the men of encouragement, a blessing of encouragement, and of course that comes from your own perspective. So that's how we'll end the show tonight, but 10 more minutes of questions would be great. So fire away. Anyone else?
How do you, as fathers, shepherd your kids and your spouse, whether or in a broken home, you know, with the mother of your child, long way, but where you have to play the middle, because your kids may be more attached to you on some things and not with the mother of your children. How do you act and play in that? One, if you have a great relationship with the mother, and two, if you have a horrible relationship with the mother, how does that change? Or do you get out of the middle? Do you play an intermediary role? What's your sense there?
Yeah, for me, fortunately, we were always aligned. We were 90% of the time aligned when the kids were possible. But made sure that the kids understood that, right? I mean, always wanted to be that to be very clear, very upfront. And they were aware sometimes even where we didn't always necessarily agree, but the decision that we made was going to be a joint one, right? And so kids, I think, are pretty smart. They kind of they understand what they get, where they can push and where they can't push. So.
With social media being very prevalent, you're a father, things of that nature, you have your kids, their friends come from broken homes. Have you asked them what the differences are and what they think about the other kid that doesn't have a parent or something? And are you that deep, with your child, or do you that open to them to discover now?
I mean, I want to tackle that. It's a pretty passionate one for the whole family. So our children are the only ones that do not have mobile phones in their class. And we've made that decision very early on when we were living abroad in China. And you were watching young people date, not talking to each other, but looking at their phone. And then young families, similar to our families when we had kids all under 4, going to restaurants and putting this here. And if I'm offending you, I'm sorry. But it's absolutely the most weirdest thing possible. And so we have this culture where this is normal. And so I think making a decision is to teach what social media is and the mechanics behind social media, like TikTok, and understand how it works has been the greatest opportunity ever, because they don't have anything to do with it right now. And I think that that's just been something we have decided to anchor on to build the culture of our family. Now, there are downsides to that. At the same time, if they're going over someone's house and they're at school, everyone has it, we don't stop. We're not that Amish. The whole point is just stand on what you want to teach your children about what something is, and then let them go experience it out there and make some decisions. And so that's just one area. We haven't done it in every single particular area, but that's the one we knew right away we were going to clamp down on. And we had repercussions, trust me. But we have just continued to choose it this way, and there is a difference between the ability to socialize and other.
Yeah, I mean, my two younger ones are 20 and 18. And so my 20-year-old daughter was most concerned about her your body image and all that kind of stuff, filters and all that. For a while, we were concerned. So we didn't cut them off. We did kind of limit, the time and all that, but they would tend to find ways around the kids. They're very, very, very smart. But fortunately, and we had her in counseling a few years ago, not just because of that. I mean, just being a teenager and all that kind of stuff, and that helped a great deal. My son's is a little bit different. So my son, he's on TikTok, right? He has 70,000 followers with 6 million views, right? Just doing goofy stuff, right? Now this kid, I mean, just for context, he graduated number 2 from Lawrence North, 5.0 GPA, right? 5.0, right? All his classes, honors, international baccalaureate, and AP. So I was never really worried about it from an academic standpoint. He knew what his, he had his own boundaries and all that. And then once he got to college, he began to self-regulate a little bit more, right? So we were very blessed in that regard. So he self-regulates, even though he's very, very popular, right? But how other parents deal with it, I mean, I don't know, especially if there were serious issue around, body image and self-esteem and all that. I don't know if the answer is completely, for a lot of people, cutting them off. I don't think a lot of people do that, but fortunately, that was not an issue that I personally had to deal with. That would have been difficult.
So I kind of heard two parts to your question. So, okay, so for starters, just my kids are very sheltered. I mean, my wife wanted to homeschool them from an early age, which we did, and I'm actually thankful for it. It's really helped shape their character. They're great young men, and I think a lot of that was due to my wife encouraging that schooling method for them. Again, I went to public schools with my wife. I love all the different options for schooling, and I think it's a very personalized thing for kids. But I recognize that my kids are sheltered. We then moved them to a hybrid private school homeschool model. That was what they went to for middle school and elementary school. And my older one now goes to Heritage, a Christian school. So again, I recognize that there's a lot of things that my kids are going to be shocked about. And so I try to be somewhat cognizant of that and talk to them about things. Again, they don't have a lot of friends that maybe come from broken families or have, they're different situations than us. So those are things that we do try to talk about. I mean, there's also a lot of, this kind of ties into the social media stuff. We also didn't allow them to have screens at an early age. When they got to high school, my son now has a phone. My middle school doesn't. And again, they're one of the few, but there are things that they start to see and hear about that we try to have those conversations early on, so what's going on? I mean the sexuality, everything's over sexualized now, so we talk about that. We talk about trans and furries that are in high schools now, and there's a lot of there's a lot of things they're like, what? Like, they don't even know this stuff exists, all right? And so I'm like, yep, this is going on. Or even more serious things. There'll be race relations or anything else. They're like, what? And I'm like, yep, these things exist in the world. So there's a lot of things that they're sheltered to that even my 11-year-old, he may not understand all of it, but we try to have mature conversations with them about things they're going to experience in life that are outside of their little bubble that we kept them in, and again, part of that has been, intentional. We want to really help them be mature, faith-following, men, but they have to realize that, this is not heaven yet, and so it's a fallen world, and they got to live in that, those different areas that of fallenness, and there's a lot to talk about there. So it's complicated, but I think the more we can be upfront and intentional about those conversations, hopefully that'll help make it a little bit easier as they age. But I don't know if that answered the question. Was that?
And let's see, if you were
One of the
all the things that you were shaped.
Yeah, I think one of the things when our kids were growing, and this was a lot of work, but trying to create a place where their friends wanted to come hang out.
Yes.
Make my house an attractive place to play basketball in the driveway, and then have to give them food that they really all wanted to have afterward, and then encouraging kind of fun conversations with them or whatever. I mean, that required us to not be focused on a bunch of other stuff that we might want to do, maybe lay down some projects that had to delay. But and we had the same thing with our close by friends. That provided us with an introspection of, okay, what's going on in their world. The other thing is, my son said this, I asked him the question about what was most important. My oldest, he said, show interest and ask questions.
That's right.
And when he was looking or playing a video game, hey, what's the game you're playing? Oh, NHL. Oh, well, show me your players. Or you're on he's on the screen, what's the video you're watching or whatever. And he, likewise, we waited a long time before we allowed, but it's way different today. I mean, every 30, minutes, it seems like it's getting harder and harder to do this. But showing that interest, asking a lot of questions, being involved, and then ask hard questions. So when something comes up and it's a little uncomfortable and something, hey, what's this picture on your phone? Hey, let's talk about that, and not just shame them, but to say, look, let's talk about this for a minute. This is the porn stuff that's on here is causing 80% more people to have depression or isolation, suicide. We need to talk about this stuff because it's real. It's going on. What's going on in your school? Let's talk about that. How did this get on your phone? It's like, no shame, but let's get it out in the open and be honest and realistic about it. And I think then they're not afraid to talk to me because I'm not the bad guy. I'm not going to, throw down, but we're going to get really honest and really direct about this. And, sometimes you want to softball it a little bit.
It's hard to in the world today.
And you just can't.
It's all coming so fast.
I don't know that those are answers. They're just what we did.
Yeah. You have some good perspectives here, and I think that's what's beautiful because you all have different roadmaps of how you're engaging with your children at their stage. So we've got time for a few more questions. Gentlemen back.
Yeah, so as someone who didn't grow up with an active father in my life, I feel a lot of times, I'm constantly acting to give attention, but I constantly walking blindly. So I guess my question to you guys is, do you recommend any resources for guys like me who I don't necessarily have somebody to reach out? My grandpa, who's my hero of all that, that passed away a few years back. And, I can't call my dad because I don't want to take his advice. Anyway, so, of course, there's other men and other fathers in the room that, like, what resources would you suggest just for somebody like me who just wants to be the best dad I could be, but I don't know what's how to.
So, one of the things that we've done at our organization is launch some new courses. So our main course, Strong Fathers, 3 weeks long, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., 90 hours of instruction. But these are mostly still very, very low income dads and so on. So we're launching a new series that's for, we'll call them working dads, typically sort of middle class, upper middle class dads, because just because you are economically in a place to be able to provide for your kid, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're emotionally and otherwise prepared to be a father. So we're going to be launching that very, very soon.
How do we latch on to that?
It'll be on our website, and you'll be able to just sign. Just like you can sign up for our Strong Fathers course now. You'll be able to sign up for it on the website.
Micah, Matt, Mitch, or Micah. Both days.
Well, I think a couple things. You were talking about John Tyson, and there are books. Books are helpful because they just sort of give you the information, but at the same time, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. So you gotta walk with some people who are doing it, finding some dads that you're like, wow, I like what he's doing. I'm gonna go ask him some questions. Would you go have coffee with me? Could we grab lunch? I need some guys around me that help me do this, and never be ashamed for that. I think we all need other guys walking with us in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of guys in this room that if I needed something, I might go, hey, Greg, can you help me with that? Because Greg's got a lot more experience with it than me, and he's going to be, knowing Greg, not only is he going to be able to help me with it, but introduce me to 42 other people that actually could help me with it. It's true. But at the same time, it really gives them, it's a gift to get that, to be able to be asked to share out of your experience. And I think a lot of people like that. The other thing, our ministry, we do a father-son camp and a father-daughter camp every year here in North Carolina. And part of the reason for that is just get dads to connect with their kids, separate from all the other things that are going on in life, but also to be around other dads who decided to do the same kind of thing. Like the guys who decided to show up here tonight. It's like, oh, look around the room. These are probably some of those people. And even if you can't afford to do something like that, like that's why organizations have free programs. We have scholarships for everything we do. It's like, hey, go get involved, find some of these things, and say, what can you offer me? I mean, there's John Eldridge has a book called It takes a little tiny thin book, but it just talks about, hey, what is it as a dad? So you could read, engage with other people, and to get some of the help, and then go do some things that maybe can teach you some of those steps because maybe somebody's walked the path before, and they give you that and help you with that roadmap. It's like the primal path that John does. There's really great programs out there, but doing that alone still kind of feels isolating. So it's good to do it with the company of other than that.
Are there year-round sign-ups for these camps or at particular points in the year?
There are particular points in the. There are a lot of people who do stuff like this. So I mean, like we're just one. Like I've got my little sign-up sheet and whatever. We've got a Father Son Camp coming up at the beginning of May. I'll share that with you. You can scan it and go. And we try to make that available to dads, anybody who wants to go. But that's the point of it. And so many other organizations around the city and churches will try to do stuff like that, pushing the company of other good. And you know what you guys are doing is. What I love about what you're doing now is you're saying, hey, let's open this great program up to people that maybe can't come or wouldn't come to what we do on the endangered buddies. Yeah.
Yeah, as I just add your church. Yeah, I mean, but I joined a small group of 4 other guys at my church, and we met for 2 years, and we were similar life stages, and just encourage each other, praying for each other. But the last book we read was called Dad Tired, and we just talked about things we deal with. So, yeah, I'm sure hopefully church has something like that. But, what do you call it?
Yeah, I want to encourage you to also just, in the C7 folks here, this is exactly why we're here. Is actually to be a community where you can warmly walk into and be like, everybody in this room has got the same questions, maybe different context, same questions about being down. And so I'd say let's start here and get our names out on and mentoring lists here, because I think this is how the movement is going to grow. And so I want to encourage you to invite people into it. Anybody that says no to wanting to spend time with you, wanting to be a better dad, it's not worth spending time with you. So let's just start in this room and create that momentum. The last thing I'd say is small steps. Anything that you can do to just be intentional, to engage, somewhat in a roadmap and in community. You got it, because that's what these guys said here, and I think that's a good play. So, Adam,
What role would you say prayers has played for your country in a very practical way, and how do you be able to see the fruit of it?
It's crucial for me. I mean, pray for my kids every day. I mean, every day for you, protection and guidance and direction, and also help me to be a better father. I don't know how you make it without prayer.
So I'm going to take that question and say what I was going to say. You asked about the blessing, but sure. I have a distinct memory of when my wife told me that we were pregnant for the first time. We were living actually downtown, 17th in New Jersey, at a house. It's one of the few houses that's still there that hasn't been remodeled, right on the corner. And she told me we were having a baby, and within a minute or two, I was down on my knees praying. I mean, I was scared out of my mind. Yes, that's exactly what I was like. I was like, Lord, I can't take care of my damn self. I need your help, And that's been my prayer, continuously. Is I can't do this all by myself, right? I still can't take care of myself, right? And so, I cannot be a father without, you, God, being present. I'll also admit, in a moment of vulnerability, that I had a long stretch in, probably 10 years of my fatherhood where I wasn't praying very much. I wasn't spending time, in daily prayer, and I think that I wasn't as good of a dad during that time. I'm thankful that the last couple of years it's become more of a daily thing, and I think that my kids can tell a difference, and my wife can tell a difference. So, yes. It definitely is a huge part of it. That's not only praying for my kids, but it's also a prayer, but. And I don't do this every night anymore, but when they were young, I would say a blessing over them, like at night, I think we can pray for our kids. We can also bless our kids, ask the Lord to bless them, but those two things have been really impactful.
Yeah, Mitch, I think yes, as we're wrapping up the time. Yes. Bless them with some.
Yeah, a couple of things. I think on that part, I'll just say, whenever my kids are doing something of a big move, we always invite everybody, our kids all come over, we have dinner, and then we all pray. And that just kind of brings the community of our family together when we can. Even sometimes they're on the phone or whatever it is, but that's a big part of it. We also have a prayer board in our kitchen that's got every kid's name on it and all the, whatever the 10,000 things or 3 things they've got going on, that we include in prayer for them. Yeah, so that's it. Yeah, I wrote down a couple of things when we were thinking about this today. We were talking about what would I say is that, we really have to take back fathering. I think it's been given up. I think it's been handed off to too many other things. And we really owe it to our kids and to the generations of our families. Our inheritance is not really money. Our inheritance is that, the fathering, the love, the care, the relationship that we have, and passing down the stories of transformation. But and I said it's high stakes business, and it impacts us right now, and it has generational implication, but it's also eternal importance, and that loving them, nurturing them, those things are all critical. And it feels, as a guy, sometimes love, nurture, intimacy, those words, it's like you better get used to being okay with those words. Because my dad did not use those words. He grew up in a generation where it wasn't it. But, stop that now. Erase that from your vocabulary. You go back and start using those things.
What's emotional intimacy?
Right, exactly. It's like do what I said. The days are long and the years are short. Heard that in parenting, and we have to be strategic and take small steps. Because if we don't take small steps, we're going to be overwhelmed by the fact that we have to do so much. And it's never too late to start fathering well. You and I have had this conversation. If that can transform when they're 18, 19, 20 years old, that's plenty of time to see everything completely change, right? So it's never too late. Go after it, and they'll notice immediately that you've decided to be intentional about your fathering and about how you're going to love them. Yeah. Larry?
So, to be very brief, 3Bs: be present, be vulnerable, be loving, and give yourself grace. If you care about this, be a better father, that speaks volumes about who you are. So give yourself grace.
So, Chris, and I just wrap up by thanking all of these guys to volunteer their time and their wisdom and their perspectives, which are all very different. Hopefully it reaches you today. It actually inspires you to take a small step. And that would be my encouragement, again, is to take a small step. But here's the thing: pursue your kids like you pursue your wife. If you have a wife still, pursue her. If you have children, pursue that in their interest. Take small steps towards that. Every day counts. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm sure there's a little bit of time left over to say hello, but can we give these guys a round of applause?